In what may become one of the biggest child molesting cases ever on record, 7 nursery school teachers were arraigned today on more than 100 counts of child molestation.
The accused include the preschool owner, 76-year-old Virginia McMartin, her daughter, and 2 grandchildren.
Finding out just what happened to the McMartin preschoolers in Manhattan Beach, California would spark a national media obsession.
A case which has shocked much of Southern California and caused a lot of parents to worry about the safety of their children,
setting off a panic around the country.
In alarming numbers, preschoolers have been exploited.
Could it be your child?
The media blitz demonstrated unstinting belief that this had happened.
It was sensational and lurid and seemed to always be expanding.
1,400 children in this community have been ritualistically abused.
But were they? Decades later, while the McMartin case has been largely forgotten, its impact lives on.
The McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, as it looked when we photographed it discreetly just 3 weeks ago.
Local reporter Wayne Satz of KABC in Los Angeles broke the story.
It started out here in Manhattan Beach looking like an isolated incident. One mother noticed that her young son was having nightmares and difficulty sitting down.
Teachers at this prominent Southern California preschool were accused of sexually molesting their young students.
Authorities now believe that at least 60 young children were victimized, and that the ultimate number could well be much greater.
Fueled by unskeptical press reports, the charges mounted on the evening news.
Those children, some of them as young as 2 years old, were photographed by the suspects.
Kiddie porn was the primary purpose for the alleged sexual abuse of children.
Becoming more and more bizarre.
Some children allege that a living creature was sacrificed on the church's altar.
The truth about Satanism is they truly do use blood, and they mix it with urine, and then they also use the real meat, the real flesh. This is what makes Satanism true, and this is what 1,200 molested kids in the city of Manhattan Beach have told the sheriff's department.
Most of the allegations had been made here at Children's Institute International, CII, a child abuse prevention center. At the request of prosecutors, CII social worker Kee McFarlane and her team had been videotaping interviews with the preschoolers.
Using puppets to encourage the children to reveal what happened, the therapists were able to unlock the horrible secrets of the McMartin school.
Virginia McMartin, her daughter, 2 grandchildren, and 3 other teachers were ultimately indicted on more than 300 counts of molestation.
2 South Bay preschools.
It wasn't long before accusations of abuse were being reported at 7 other daycare centers in LA County alone.
Investigators were at the Hickory Preschool in Torrance earlier today.
And then fear spread across the country, eventually targeting scores of daycare centers. But the story that initially fed the panic was not all it seemed. In the summer of 1983, a 39-year-old mother called the Manhattan Beach Police Department and accused McMartin teacher Raymond Buckey of molesting her 2.5-year-old son.
In the DA's office, all kinds of doubts developed, particularly about the fact that the mother of the first complaining child was psychotic, but they just kept on going. It was like the Titanic. It was like a roller coaster or a ship that just was out of control and couldn't stop.
The police released Buckey for lack of evidence. But then they sent out this letter to some 200 families, instructing them to question their children about sodomy, oral sex, and fondling.
What happens then is the parents start to talk to their kids, and then they start to talk to each other, and then they start to compare notes, and pretty soon emotionally involved parents are engaging in leading and suggestive questioning of their child.
Kenneth Lanning worked with the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit and consulted on the McMartin investigation.
Once these cases are contaminated, it's almost impossible to know with any degree of certainty what actually happened.
But the therapists at CII believed they knew what had happened. Based on their videotaped interviews, they said that more than 90% of the 400 preschoolers they talked to reported signs of sexual abuse.
Mr. Parrott, can you help Susie show us what happened to her?
The courts immediately sealed CII's interviews with the McMartin children. But the CII therapists shared demonstration videos like this one with the press and discussed their findings on television.
We have heard it 100 times or more from children, the same things, the same games, the same descriptions.
Let's talk about the McMartin case. In April 1985, authorities went to the McMartin case and looked for tunnels under the school. The children had said that they were taken into tunnels under the school. There was a chamber down there. They were sexually molested. That involved ceremonies, adults with robes, candles, chanting. Adults had no clothes on under their robes. And they were taken up into a tunnel and a triplex, a bathroom trap door of the triplex next door. They were taken out in automobiles. We're talking about 2, 3, 4-year-old children, folks, and prostituted in the community. The authorities received this complaint in 1983. They began their investigation. The authorities finally, in 1985, went out and decided to look for the tunnels because they said the children were hallucinating. The children also said that they were taken by air up into a mountainous area where they were exposed to satanic ceremonies based on what they described, and brought back in time for the parents to pick up the kids. So the authorities didn't find anything. We're getting off. Pull those next slides. Well, I'll tell you what. In the spring of 1993, I heard that the property of the McMartin School had been sold from the McMartin family to the defense attorney, actually given to him. He didn't make enough off the county. His bill was only $3 million. And from there, he said he was broke and he sold it to a contractor. The contractor was going to build an office building on the space. And I heard that the contractor had this property. And so I went out and contacted him. And I said, dear sir, I would like to have access to that property. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks. I signed a contract, assumed liability, and along with some of the parents, we hired an archaeologist from UCLA, Dr. Gary Stickle, knowing full well that I'm not qualified to say there's tunnels under there, even if I found them. And we began our dig. At the end of 2 weeks, I had to stall, because Dr. Stickle was not quite ready to admit there were tunnels. It took us 34 days. At noon the 34th day, with the bulldozers, with their motors running, ready to knock the building down, he was going to knock the building down and then build this office building, Dr. Stickle said, you know, I can say without any question right now, there have been tunnels under the school. They were filled in. Now, I'm going to show you the documentation on the tunnels. This is it. No, keep it there. Keep that there. This is the what we found. This is a preliminary report. I have a 186-page scientific report available to you out here if you're interested, by the way. We found a 9-foot wide subterranean entrance under the west wall of dog room. There were 4 classrooms. That was Ray Bucky's room. By the way, Virginia McMartin and Ray Bucky were tried. Virginia, the grandmother, was acquitted. Ray had a hung jury. And we found these tunnels in the middle of the second trial of Ray Bucky. They could have been used to convict him. We called the prosecutor. He sent his investigator out, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez told me, I don't want you entering in my conversation with the archaeologist. I said, why? He says, you're too argumentative. And I said, well, okay, you go in and talk. I'll just keep my mouth shut. We went in, he talked, and he argued with the archaeologist. Here's an investigator not qualified to talk about tunnels. He said, there aren't any tunnels there, and the archaeologist, of course, argued. But anyway, they didn't use that evidence. Strong evidence in the second trial. They ignored it right in the middle of the second trial. I might mention this. The children identified professional football players, professional baseball players, household name actors, actresses, and the son of the leading politician, not a leading politician, the leading politician in Los Angeles as being perpetrators. Okay, we found we found an avocado tree root cut on both sides of the entrance, and I'll show you this in just a few minutes. The entrance of the tunnel, as I said, it was 9 feet across the top, and on one side was a live avocado root, on the other side was a dead avocado root. They had to cut that out. We have this, by the way. We found a plastic Disney bag, copyright 1982, about 4.5 feet below the classroom floor, and 3 to 6 inches in from the entrance and under the foundation. Now, the reason that plastic Disney bag is so important is because we think that they filled the tunnel in 1982 when the complaint was initially brought to the attention of the authorities. I said 83 earlier, it's 82 when the complaint was made. And when they filled it in, the plastic Disney bag somehow or other flew in there as they were filling it in and nobody noticed it. Now, who says there is no God, right? What documentation, fantastic documentation, that tunnel, the entrance to that tunnel, this is right at the entrance, was filled in 1982 or sometime subsequent to 1982. Mr. Ken Lanning, the outstanding, know-it-all FBI expert, behavioral science, says that I took that garbage bag in 1993 out of a trash can and placed it there, that I planted evidence. Of course, Mr. Lanning says there's no organized satanic movement in this country today. There's only a few dabblers here and there. Thank you, sir. We have another 3 hours to go, okay? Can you hang in there? Okay, the tunnel proceeded south, then 45 feet through classroom 4 and 3 and north, then 10 feet within the classroom 4. The tunnels were 30 inches wide, 44 to 46 inches deep, with the top of the tunnel 30 inches under the classroom floor. The children were able to walk through it. We're talking about young kids now, right? The adults had to stoop down and walk through it, but they could do it. The tunnels were built in kind of a triangular, or I should say a semicircle type, so that they had natural support, I guess. These people know everything. They're brilliant. The footing between classroom 3 and 4 was arched, for the tunnel passed underneath it, and 12 inches shorter in depth at this location than the same footing 12 feet to the north. I'll show you that in just a minute. That's significant, because the arch was where the tunnel went, and it was arched in that particular location, whereas 12 feet away, it was 12 inches longer or thicker. Footing between, let's see, there were 4 large upright containers were found in the tunnel under the arch, obviously hand-placed. A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel across classroom 4. The top of the chamber and the top of sections of the tunnel had layers of plywood covered with tar paper, which had apparently been supported by cinder blocks and 2x2 and 2x4 wooden posts found underneath. Tunnel features made it evident that the tunnels had been hand-dug. The 7-foot tunnel extended into the triplex next door. Tunnel extended from the bathrooms off the office and classroom 1 to the front yard of the triplex next door. Front yard concealed from the street by a 3-car garage. Children described the entrance and exiting tunnels in the triplex yard exactly where the tunnels and exit were found. A 39 by 41 inch area under a hole cut in this neighbor's bathroom floor had been excavated and subsequently tilled. Now, that was where the kids told us ahead of time that they were taking us up in a trapdoor in this bathroom. And there was a crawl space in the house about like this, and we got one of our skinny archaeologists to go in there, take pictures. The bathtub protruded underneath the floor of the bathroom. There was a bathroom in the back of the same building in another apartment. It did not protrude there. This was the space we're talking about, 39 by 41 inches. Just enough room for a kid to come up and be taken out. Other significant facts: small white plastic plate with 3 pentagrams, hand-drawn on the top of the light green paint, was found by the archaeologists. Pentagrams were hand-drawn by an adult and not part of the manufacturer's design. Many other artifacts were found whose analysis will be released upon completion of the test. The analysis has been released. That's the scientific report I told you about. No doorknobs were on classroom 3, only a dead bolt lock. Each classroom had an on and off switch which was labeled fire alarm. The system did not connect to the fire station but was used as an alert within the school if somebody came around. More than 2,000 artifacts were found under the floor, the school floor, including over 100 animal bones. Due to the constraints and time constraints and so forth, we had to discontinue the process on noon the 34th day. And I will be glad to make this information available to you, and if you want to have the children go up and look at this abandoned satanic site, we can. She said, we're not interested. They weren't interested in hardcore evidence, the tunnel. They weren't interested in this abandoned satanic site. Go ahead. This is what we found. 666, one of the satanic signs. That's a stone on the site. The house had been up here. The day after the McMartin case broke in the news, the house burned to the ground. And it was here. The street's on the other side of the hill. You cannot see the site, this area down in here, from the street. You have to go in, would have to go in through the house and come down. And this, you can see it's quite elaborate. There's my associate, Judy Hansen, who works with me in L.A. And next. This is looking at the opposite direction of the picture we just took. And you can see there's San Bernardino down in there. And you can see that on the side of a mountain like that, nobody's going to find it unless you fly over with a helicopter. That's probably an altar, flattened stone. Also an altar, another altar that had been broken. This is, of course, you recognize the star. Now, this is a satanic symbol. Put the next one up. Hold the first one. There it is right there. Put the first one back on. Now overlay them. Turn it around, that away. Okay, any question about that, folks? No. Well, let's read what that says. Asmodee, a strong and powerful king, appears with 3 heads, the first like a bull, the second like a man, the third like a ram. He has a serpent's tail, the webbed feet of a goose, and he vomits fire. He rides the infernal dragon, carries lance and pennon, and is the chief of the power of Emmerman. He must be invoked, be bareheaded, or otherwise he will deceive. He gives the ring of virtues, teaches arithmetic, geometry, and other handicrafts, answers all questions, makes men invisible, indicates the place of concealed treasures, and guards them if within the domain of the Emmerman. Oh, what do we got here? Another satanic symbol. You think that wasn't a satanic site?